Oh gosh, I'm tangled. Oh my goodness. Hi, I'm Sam. I'm an artist from Dallas, Texas, and here on my channel, I talk rug tufting and art, and this week, I'll be comparing the top 3 options for tufting fabric. That is primary tufting cloth, monk's cloth, and burlap. I'll be comparing each material on 4 points: price, availability, ease of use, so how easy it is to stretch and stay on my frame, and how well it tufts, both with the cut pile and loop pile guns. This video is part 1 in a new multi-part series I'm doing where I'm comparing different tufting materials. I'll be doing one on glue, yarn, clippers, and eventually in one of those episodes, we'll finally get to answer the question of, can we wash these? If that sounds like something you'd like to check out and you'd like to join me for those, please make sure you're subscribed and hit that bell to be notified as soon as I upload. So, first impressions. I am most familiar with the primary backing fabric. This is the one that I used from jump because this is what everybody said I was supposed to use. And one of the first resources I found was tuftinggun.com, and this is what was available on their website. It has worked great for me. I really like it, so I'm really interested to see how the other ones stack up against it. This is the monk's cloth. At first glance, it looks really similar to the primary tufting cloth. The feel of it, though, is much heavier. It doesn't feel as flexible, so I'll see how that affects the tufting gun. And last but not least, I have burlap. So this is the one that I've been seeing a lot more people use, and they seem to be using it just fine. It's a little scratchy for me. I don't particularly like the texture. I find it a little bothersome. It makes me itch. However, everybody else seems to be using this just fine, so I'm actually really excited to give it a try. I'm just worried because it's so open. The weave, that's what I'm looking for. The weave on it is so open that I'm just not sure how the yarn really stays in that well. Also, these the burlap fibers, I feel they're very stiff, so I wonder if they'll have the flexibility needed to allow the needle on the tufting gun to slide through without just popping all of these. So we will see. I am going to tuft on all of these and give my final verdict. I will rank each option first through third, with first place getting 3 points, second place getting 2 points, and third place getting 1 point. At the end of it all, I will tally up all the points and see which material comes out on top. So first, let's look at price. Based on what I could find, primary backing fabric is available from $20 to $36 per yard. Monk's cloth is available from $15 to $20 a yard, and burlap is available at a whopping $4 a yard. Now, at first glance, this seems really cut and dry, but I want to raise 1 point. I've seen a lot of people say that they don't use primary backing fabric because it's much more expensive. And looking at these numbers, it does seem to support that. But I want to point out that primary backing fabric comes in a much larger piece than you're going to get of your monk's cloth or your burlap. So when you order primary backing fabric, even though you've just ordered a yard, the lengths that it comes in are going to be anywhere from 7.5 feet long to 13.5 feet long. Whereas your monk's cloth, the largest I've seen that come in is 5 feet long, and your burlap is only going to get up to 4 feet long. So with that in mind, I wanted to calculate these prices by the square footage so you can get a more accurate view of how much is actually being spent in the long run. Also, when I'm pricing my rugs, I price them based on the square footage. So this way of looking at it makes sense for me when it comes to pricing my materials and how much I'm going to use. With that being said, that puts burlap in first place at 33 cents per square foot, primary backing fabric in second place at 86 to 89 cents per square foot, and monk's cloth last at $1 to $1.30 per square foot. Now let's talk availability. This one will be pretty quick because both monk's cloth and burlap are both available at your local fabric stores. They're easy to just run out, grab it real quick, and get back to what you were doing. I do want to point out that monk's cloth must be getting really, really popular. When I first purchased for this experiment, The girl at the cutting counter asked me what I was using it for. I told her I was making rugs, and she was like, oh my gosh, we have a guy that comes in every week and stocks up on this for his own rug making business. So the fact that they have a regular customer using this for rug tufting gives me high hopes for Monk's Cloth. But there are 8 to 9 Joann fabrics without a 45-minute radius of my studio. Every single one of them is sold out of Monk's Cloth right now. So it's clearly becoming a very popular option. I advise you to stock up if that is your go-to choice for tufting fabric. Primary backing fabric, of course, is still only available online. There are 2 suppliers that I use for my primary backing fabric, which are tuftinggun.com, where you can use my code MADETHAT15 for 15% off your order. This is an affiliate code, so I will get a little kickback if you're kind enough to use that. However, this video is not sponsored, okay? Call me Tim, thanks. The other supplier I use for my primary tufting cloth is jancrafts.com. Jancrafts.com also carries Monk's Cloth, but they carry their primary backing fabric in multiple lengths. So they have a 92-inch, a 112-inch, and a 164-inch, which is 7.5 feet, about 9 feet, and 13.5 feet respectively. Tuftinggun.com carries their primary backing fabric in 157-inch length, which is about 13 feet long. So with that in mind, I'm going to put Monk's Cloth and Burlap tied in first place for 3 points each, and primary backing fabric in second for 2 points. With those 2 rankings done, now I actually want to test the physical aspects of these materials. Next up is ease of use. So in this category, I will be testing how easy it is to stretch each material on an actual tufting frame and get it into the, proper tension that it needs to be in order to tuft. Because I want to test all of them at the same time and feel how they work, I'll be using all 3 of my smaller frames. So I'll have my 14-inch, my 2x2, and my 2x3. So here I have my 14-inch frame. For some reason, I only got half a yard of Monk's Cloth, so this is the only frame I have that it'll fit on. Here we go. Like I said, this just doesn't really stretch like the primary tufting cloth does, but let's see. Okay. My first note is, because this doesn't have those little guiding lines, it's not as easy as at first glance to see if it's evenly stretched. I don't think that's a make or break, but I do feel like that is something worth noting. The more evenly it's stretched, I find the easier it is to tuft. I mean, I will say it's getting on here. It definitely doesn't feel much different than the primary tufting cloth once it's stretched. Okay, so that is stretched on there pretty well. It's got a good tautness to it. Good enough that I would feel comfortable tufting on it for sure. I'm gonna stretch the other 2 and see how I feel about those and how I feel about all 3 at the same time. So here's my 2 foot by 2 foot frame. I will be putting the primary backing fabric on here. I still feel like the primary tufting is just a little bit lighter than the Monk's Cloth. It's stretched pretty straight. Pull, pull, pull. Okay, so that is my primary tufting cloth. All right, let's get some burlap. I'm both nervous and intrigued by this because I just don't feel like it's gonna work, but also I want it to work. Man, this texture is really just tactilely doing not good things to me. I don't know about this. It doesn't really stretch. Like, it's a really, I don't know, there's not give, so I'm wondering how people are really getting it like stretched. I will say it's definitely snagging on the carpet tack strips like one would expect, and it's holding pretty securely, but it's definitely a much different sensation as far as stretching. And just because the weave of burlap is kind of like wonky anyway, I'm concerned that it won't stretch evenly and it'll be difficult to actually tuft. But I mean, I won't know until I actually get my guns out and go for it. So let's just go with the flow. I mean, it's holding a lot better than I thought it was going to, for sure. Actually holding pretty well. Like, I feel like I can really tug on it without pulling fibers out. Wow, okay. Very impressed by this, actually. Okay, burlap, come through. So having stretched all these out on frames, I don't know that I can say that one is really better than any of the others. They were all fairly easy to stretch. They all seem to be holding well on the carpet tack strips, despite my concerns about flexibility of some of the materials. They have all maintained what I would call my ideal tension for tufting. I would say that they all get top marks, 3 points for everybody. The next category we're going to check is to actually tuft them. I am going to use both my cut pile and my loop pile gun on them. I feel like those might make a difference, so I wanted to make sure that both options were covered. That way, you know, it didn't matter if you had a cut pile or a loop pile gun. So I'm gonna pull those out, pick some colors, and see how this goes. All right, so now that I have my frames prepped, I am going to tuft with both my cut pile and my loop pile gun. I'm just doing some simple square swatches. I'm just doing some simple square swatches that I'm also going to test different glues on the back of each one. So each letter corresponds with a different glue that I'm gonna test. And then this little wonky one is just like why not? There was extra space. First up, I have monk's cloth. Tuft 1 for monk's cloth. I'm just gonna do a straight line first. Okay. Okay, monk's cloth. So far, so good. This is my very first stripe. I've never used monk's cloth for tufting before. I'd say it went just as smoothly as my primary cloth does. I'd also, I mean, it looks perfectly fine on the back as well. So I'm gonna continue tufting and see how it goes. First issue. So I've done a couple of rows now, not even that many, and I feel like I've lost quite a bit of my tension. And one of my pet peeves is I don't like to re-stretch as I go. It throws off your design. Like if you have something that really needs to be in a specific place, like it needs to look in a certain way, it throws it off. So I'm a little concerned at that loss of tension, but I'm gonna keep going. Yeah, definitely losing tension on here. I think it comes back to what I was saying about how this didn't feel as flexible as the primary tufting cloth. Yes, it is tufting. Yes, the needle is able to enter the fabric, do what it needs to do. But because it doesn't have as much give, it's not sliding around the needle as much, it's trying to stop it, which I think is resulting in it pulling the fabric. Man, this losing tension is not my favorite right now. Yeah, I think we're gonna have to dock some of those ease of use points. So all of these little white fibers that are sticking out are spots where the scissors of the tufting gun have not only sliced through the yarn, but they've also sliced through the monk's cloth itself, and those little frayed bits are forced through with the yarn. So that is slightly concerning because there is quite a bit of that. Look how loose that is. That is extremely loose. Like that's a lot of give that it has now. And that's after tightening while I've been doing this. I've been going through and tightening as I move along. So the fact that it's pulled that loose is we're gonna dock some points for that ease of use. You're gonna lose some ease of use points. Okay, I am going to go ahead and pull out my loop pile gun to do the interior of these letters and see how that works with the monk's cloth. I'm also going to retighten this. Where's my wire puller? Ugh. As usual, loop pile is just so much smoother than cut pile. Still not my fave. Like, I use it where I need to, but I will say it doesn't feel like it's chewing through the monk's cloth like the cut pile did. I will say the loop pile does move more smoothly through the monk's cloth than the cut pile. So monk's cloth. At first glance, when I first stretched it onto my frame, it seemed perfectly fine. As I worked with it, the loss of tension on this it's painful, I'm gonna be honest. I really don't like that it loses that much tension, and considering tension is really, really important when it comes to properly tufting, I'm definitely going to dock it a point from the ease of use category. I feel like that is a big problem, that it doesn't stay stretched on the frame, and since ease of use was about stretching it on the frame, I'm gonna drop it down to 2 points for that category. I mean, overall, it seemed to tuft okay. I just really, really don't care for how much of these like white fibers came through. Like that's really annoying when you're trying to keep a clean, even color. And I'm just imagining if I was doing like a navy blue or black, how very annoying that would be to have to go through and pick out all of these little clusters. So yeah, they're definitely getting docked a little bit for that. So right now, I'm only gonna give this 2 points. So right now this is in second, because it's not in first, but it's definitely not the worst that it could possibly be for tufting. I'm gonna see how these other two materials do and give it an overall grade, you know, based on that curve. So next up, because I wanna make sure I'm working with ones that I'm not familiar with first, I'm going to use the burlap next. That way I still have a fresh sort of palette for that. Something I find interesting about the burlap that I wasn't expecting is that it is really hard to see your sketches. My eyes want to immediately look through it instead of look at it because it's so open that I can just see, and it's pretty transparent. I am going to start with the cut pile just like I did last time for the monk's cloth, and we'll see how it turns out. I'm really excited about this one because I have no idea how this is going to work. First off, just sticking the needle through the weave sounds like I'm tearing through it. I know it did not just tear because I'm looking at it, but it sounds creaky. But let's see, okay. Who's not plugged in? Who's not ready to party? All right, in we go, let's see. Okay, we've done the first 2 rows. It was smooth. I'm not gonna lie. It was smooth. It's very early, but I think I might like this. I don't know, man. So I think, I'm trying to find the word for what it feels like. It feels very clean. I don't know if it's because it's such an open weave, it's not trying to fight to get in between. But I don't know, it's working. I'm very surprised, as you can tell. Like, I don't know why I really thought burlap was just gonna bust it wide open, okay? Like, I just did not think it was gonna be this sturdy. Oh my gosh, I see why people use burlap. This is nice. I just really did not think burlap was gonna work this well. My goodness. I feel like this piece is holding its tension pretty well. So that is good, no lost points there. Okay, I've got a curved line in here. I'm gonna see how it does. I'm gonna see how it does. It's just a little smiley face. How we looking? Not bad. That's how we're looking. So I've got all the cut pile done on the burlap. I am really, really impressed with how the burlap turned out. I finished the cut pile. I am going to move on to the loop pile and see how that turns out. But right now, burlap is exceeding my expectations. I actually need to look on the front. So for burlap, I was actually really worried that I would see a bunch of little fibers come through. And while I do see some, they're so fine that I almost feel like once this is shaved down, it's not even going to be really noticeable. Like here's one big one, but I mean, everything else is, like I said, pretty fine. It kind of just ends up looking like lint. So next what I'm gonna do is thread my loop pile gun and see how that goes. I'm, like I said, so happy with the burlap. I'm very, very surprised. I did not think I was gonna like burlap this much. So yeah, let me get this loop pile going and see how it turns out. This loop pile gun is moving through this burlap like butter. Like, I feel like loop pile already moves easily, but this is just like, what do you mean? I think we finally hit one little problem with our burlap. And I think that's all we need. All right, let's see if what I think just happened back here. So what I thought was occurring is happening. If you look closely, you can see these longer strands of loops that have come out. It's not, like in some spots it's even, but if you look close, you can see that it's not everywhere. You've got these longer pieces that have just like stuck out. So what's happening is essentially because the weave of the burlap is so much wider than say your primary tufting or your monk's cloth, the needle of the loop pile gun is lingering within a single dot basically. So it's pushing through more yarn and that is what's creating those longer loops. I've seen similar things happen with the cut pile gun. It's not unheard of, but with the loops, it is much more noticeable, especially since the only way to clean it up is to cut that loop. So now you've got little tufts of, cut edges within your loops, which I don't know if some of you guys have noticed, but I've definitely noticed there's a slight color difference between a blunt cut edge of yarn and the looped yarn. So that is, so far has been my one, I don't really like that part. I'm gonna do the rest of these and see if it keeps occurring before I make the final verdict on that. But looking over the finished product, it definitely did very well for the cut pile. For the loop pile, I will still say it did very well. It's just something to be mindful of, those spots where you can linger and push through more yarn than you need and end up with those longer loops that need to be cut. Other than that, I mean, the burlap did great. I'm singing its praises. It did a great job. I am interested to see how, longevity-wise, it holds up. But I mean, burlap is kind of an industrial fabric, so I guess it would probably hold up really well. I don't know, man. I'm surprised. Okay, I'm surprised. But I'm going to move on. Next, I have the primary tufting cloth. Like I said before, that's the one I'm most familiar with, so I'm not anticipating any surprises with that. I will still talk through the experience of using that material as well though. So I'm going to prep my yarn and get started on that one. Last but not least, we have the primary backing fabric. As I've said, this is the one that I use most regularly. It was the very first one that I tried because when I started doing research, there were so few people doing it that the only material I was told was the primary backing fabric. I I personally like it. Like I said, it's been a few hours since I stretched this. I haven't lost any tension. As a recap for the ease of use category, that encompasses stretching it on the frame and how well it stays on the frame. I'm going to put burlap and primary backing fabric in first place, so 3 points each. And monk's cloth, I could give it a 2, but I think I'm gonna give it a 1. It loosened up a lot, like unforgivably loosened. I don't know how y'all use it with that happening. Yeah, so it's gonna be in last place for that. It doesn't even get second for that. I'm unforgivable. Anyways, I'm going to go ahead and do my cut pile tufting for the primary backing fabric, and then I will go through and do the loop pile. I'll talk you through how the fabric reacts, but I mean, you really can't go wrong. And here we go. I just don't have a lot of notes for the primary tufting cloth. Like I said, I've used this one the most. It is the most forgiving for diagonals and curved lines. So if you're doing detail work, this is, I feel like, the best option. The burlap wasn't too bad. It didn't really like some of these curves. It kind of fought back a little bit in those spots, and the diagonal, it was kind of just like chewing it up a little bit. But I mean, it didn't tear through the burlap, so that's not to say it is not a viable option. I just feel like the primary tufting cloth is slightly easier to work with in that aspect and doesn't fight back as much. All right, loop pile we go. So primary tufting cloth for loop pile absolutely beats out burlap for loop pile. The loop pile has maintained a more even texture. It doesn't have a bunch of those super long random loops that'll have to be trimmed. So in that regard, it definitely wins. So that is our primary backing fabric with the cut pile and loop pile. It's still got a good amount of tension in it. Let's check the back. So this is the cut pile and loop pile on the primary backing fabric. You can see, looking at the loop pile, there's none of those really long ones of the loop pile that stick out. And again, I think that is really attributed to the fact that the weave on the primary tufting cloth is just much tighter. It looks much more uniform. The cut pile looks great. We don't have a lot of those little white threads coming through like we did with the monk's cloth. So that was our primary backing fabric. So now that I've gone through the monk's cloth, the burlap, and the primary with both the cut pile and loop pile, I feel like burlap did an incredible job with the cut pile. The loop pile, the fact that those loops don't come out evenly is bothersome to someone like me that does very detailed work. So for that, I'm gonna put burlap in second place. I'm going to put primary backing fabric in first place, because I mean, it works on diagonals, curves, cut pile, loop pile, like there just really aren't any issues with it. And I'm gonna put monk's cloth in last place with just 1 point. With losing all of that tension, yes, I docked them a point for ease of use, but also the lack of flexibility in that particular material also made all of those little threads come through. It was getting caught on the cut pile gun, and I mean, that's just, the usability on that one just wasn't that great. So I'm going to put monk's cloth in last place. So I'm gonna go back, tally up all my points, give my final thoughts, and that'll be it for this edition of Tufting Wars. We actually have a pretty obvious winner. Wow, I wasn't expecting this. All right, so our first, let's let's have a little bit of anticipation. In last place with 7 points is Monk's Cloth. Overall, it just fell short in some of these categories. For price per square foot, it was just a little bit high. That ease of use as far as like stretching it on the frame and having it actually stay on the frame as it should, really lost it a lot of points. I was very disappointed in that aspect of Monk's Cloth. Tufting wise, it was okay, but in the end, it just couldn't recover. In second place, we have my favorite primary backing fabric. Of course, it is just a really great go-to fabric. It is a professional quality material. It is the recommended material. It did lose a couple of points for price and availability just because it is an online only product. And unfortunately, you have to purchase it in higher volumes. But other than that, ease of use and tufting, it is top notch. So that is why it's sitting in second place with 10 points. And in first place, surprisingly, barely eking out the primary backing fabric is burlap. I am shocked by this. I was not expecting burlap to perform this well up against the primary backing fabric or even the Monk's Cloth. I really thought Monk's Cloth would do better and I'd like it a lot more, but burlap just did an incredible job. Price, it was number one. Availability, it's obviously something that is readily available in stores and can be picked up at any time. Ease of use, it's stretched wonderfully, held wonderful tension. Burlap is a really great option for tufting. I will definitely be incorporating it into my tufting projects, especially if it's something I want to experiment with and just really aren't sure and I don't want to waste any material. Burlap is definitely going to be a go-to for me. So there you have it. That is how primary backing fabric, burlap, and Monk's Cloth stack up against one another. I would love to know if you guys agreed with my results. If you don't, that's totally fine. Like I said before, these are totally my opinions. As you can see, I kind of made up the rules as I went, but I'm comfortable with my assessment of how these materials work, and I will be taking into consideration how they do. If you decide to do that as well, I hope you gained some information that will hopefully help you make some decisions on what materials you personally would like to use. And if I hated on your favorite, I'm sorry. You can still use it if it works for you. But for me, I know what I'm going for. Next week, join me when I glue the backs of these, and then you can see what each one of those letters mean. If you have an idea of what they mean, comment down below and let me know. As always, remember, you don't gotta make it perfect, you just gotta make progress. I'm Sam. I tested all of that, and you should make something too.
Sam made that.
This one will be Critty. Critty? How does your mouth work? What are we doing? This one should be Quitty. Quitty again? Pretty quick. David.